active, passive, active, passive. What turns out to happen is that the fire and air elements all match up with the active polarity of energy moving out from the center, and the water and earth elements all match up with the passive polarity or energy moving back towards the center. Now, as we go through each of the 12 archetypes, we'll see this. Active fire, active air, passive earth, passive water. We'll go through those one by one for you as well. But here's the other thing of how that circle of 12 is put together. The 3 modalities, cardinal, fixed, mutable, each contain one of the 4 elements. Cardinal has cardinal fire, cardinal earth, cardinal air, cardinal water, etc. Then each of the 4 elements contain one of each of the modalities. So as we look at the fire element, we're going to have cardinal fire, fixed fire, and mutable fire. So as you're working to understand these 12 archetypes, in astrology, we'll use the harmonics of 2, 3, and 4, and we'll put together the polarity, the modality, and the element. And when we're working with these modalities and elements, as you can see, they're very interchangeable. 3 times 4 is 12. 4 times 3 is 12. I think you see how that kind of fits as you're moving around the zodiac or the circle of 12. When we move through and look at the fire element, again, we're working with spirit. And so what we have is the temperament of energy bursting forth. All you have to do is visualize looking into a fire or visualize looking into a candle flame, and you just see all of that energy of fire. You see its combustibility. Now, what is so interesting about the element of fire is that, for instance, if I say the element of air, you think of the wind blowing. If I say the element of water, you can think of a lake. If I say the element of earth, you can think of the ground and the grass and putting your feet on the earth. Well, what we have with the element of fire is it has to consume or destroy one of the other 3 elements in order to actually exist. Look at how the element of fire, or excuse me, the element of air will stir up the fire. Look at how fire burns across the ground. Then look at how water will put out fire. So the 4 elements all have their interchangeability with each other, in addition to each being their own element. So this element of fire, it creates and it destroys. And in and of itself, we don't look at that as being either a positive or a negative, a good or a bad. For instance, think about the forest fires. In natural law, the fire consuming the forest would many times create enough heat that there would be certain plant seeds that could actually germinate. They would need fire to germinate in order to burst forth into life. So again, do not put this element of fire into black-white categories in creation and destroying as good or bad. In essence, what we're having with that element of spirit is that divine spark of source that is coming from within us and coming out. Active polarity, as we'll see when we go through all 12, the 3 fire elements, that active polarity is, again, energy moving out from the center. And so with fire, it's the divine spark. One of the things that we will understand from the perspective of evolutionary astrology is that the element of fire will contain the sense of a special destiny. And we'll look at how that destiny or sense of it operates through these three different signs within the element of fire. So, we've all heard these words before: creativity, inspiration, freedom, visionary, energetic, passionate, enthusiastic. There's probably more words that we could put to the element of fire, but I think that you start to get the picture of how this temperament of fire is just the energy of spirit coming forth all over the place. And here's a tidbit I did not realize. I've heard of the word Agni and Agni Yoga for decades, and I did not know, and I share this with you, that Agni is the Sanskrit word for fire, for spirit, for source, for energy. So let's just move right into this now, and we're going to look at the archetype of Aries from the perspective of the fire element. As we looked at earlier, all of the fire elements are going to be active polarity, and we have these three signs: Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. And as we look at those, the first one, Aries, is the cardinal modality. So Aries is going to relate to active cardinal fire. Moving right into the sense of special destiny with Aries, it is the first archetype of the zodiac, and so that special destiny is unknown. It is life bursting forth. We feel the sense of there must be something special that I came here to do. I have this burning energy to just go forth into the world, but I don't quite know what it is. And so this fire element through Aries needs to have that freedom to become, to do, to explore. And in that sense of going forth and initiating, acting, there's going to be that famous reaction we know from Aries energy that then brings knowledge back to ourselves of exactly what it is that is so special and unique about us and this feeling of a sense of destiny. So when we look at the element of fire through Aries, this is where it is fueling that instinctive need to become, the instinctive desire to act, to just go forth. And so this is why we want, with this sign, to have freedom at all costs. Anytime we sense that we are being constrained in any way, we run into the distortions from the archetype of Aries through the element of fire. We run into that defensiveness. We run into the anger. We run into somebody who can be very hot-tempered. Just look at fire and how it flickers, and you can see that it comes and goes all over the place. And so can you see how through this element of fire with Aries, we can have energy that blows hot, intensely hot, and then just as easily goes cold, blows out. And so as we start to put this together and we look at the archetype of Aries through the fire element, you can see with some of these words we have someone who initiates, someone who explores, the pioneer, the adventurer, someone who can be quite impulsive. You can see all this instinctive fiery energy to become. Now, I consider when we're working through the modalities and the elements, it is almost a simplification process. It becomes it takes that whole archetype of Aries, and when you look at it from that element of the fire and the spirit, it simplifies what we know about it. And so before I move on, is there any questions with this element of fire in the archetype of Aries? Active fire, cardinal fire, initiating all over the place. Does this make sense for everyone? And if there's no questions, I'll move on, but I just want to check in and see if this is clear.
Yes, it looks okay on the board.
All right. So as we did before, I have decided in these two series that I am going to use the charts of well-known personalities because it's easier for all of us to understand them as we've seen them out in the public eye many times. For the element of fire, I chose Barbara Walters, or what was it? Baba Wawa from Saturday Night Live, Gilda Radner, for any of you who remember her back in the early days of Saturday Night Live and how she would do her um, impersonations of her. Barbara's known for not being able to pronounce her R's very correctly. So Baba Wawa is who we have here. If you're looking at the chart, first of all, you're going to see the ruler of Aries by sign, Mars. In the first house, you're going to see that it's conjunct Mercury in the first house. They are in Libra. We have all the signs flipped on their natural houses. You're going to see as well that we have the planet Uranus in Aries and in the seventh house. Barbara Walters, I'm gonna forget to pronounce my R's. Yes, she's a 10th house Pluto. She's Pluto in Cancer. What I'm going to concentrate on here, though, is that fiery Aries energy. And she really was a pioneer for women in the field of journalism, TV entertainment. She had a background with her father being somewhat in the business and entertainment world. He made and lost fortunes 3, 4 times over. One of the times when she was small, he was in charge of producing entertainment out in Las Vegas. So from a very early age, Barbara Walters was introduced to a lot of the entertainment industry, and she said because she met so many of them as a child and grew up with them, she just carried on with it in her life, and that's why um, that Aries, fiery spirit wasn't overwhelmed by meeting heads of state or presidents or, big names in that whole world of entertainment. She was someone who could just initiate and go right after him, and she became known in her journalism work for all of the interviews that she would do, and that um, boldness, Mercury, Mars, in being able to ask all kinds of questions, yes, probably was tempered a little bit by the two planets, Mercury, Mars in Libra, but she could be quite, again, bold in asking the questions that everybody wanted to know. She also had a reputation for being quite fiery and fighting her way. That fiery archetype with Aries, fighting her way through a very male-dominated world in journalism, in national TV, including the national news, which she was on for a while. And when I was reviewing my notes, she had a lot of feisty energy with, what was the name? I think it was Harry Reisner, whoever her co-anchor was on the news here. Let me see if I can find this for you really. Anyway, Harry Reasoner, I think it was. And if I have the name wrong, oh well. They had a very feisty relationship behind the scenes when they co-anchored the evening news, and she was very feisty, fought her way to be created to be considered as an equal with him. You may be familiar with the fact that she was a co-host of a talk show called The View in more recent years. She recently retired. She's retired multiple times, and multiple times come out of retirement. There's that Aries fiery energy going back and forth, active cardinal, this way, that way. I'm going to change my mind however many times it pleases me to do so in the moment, depending upon what is energizing me. Well, when she made her most recent retirement on The View, one of the things that happened was all of these female journalists, female news people, all came out and honored her because they felt that she was such a pioneer in breaking down that wall of women being able to work in the journalism and news world just as well as men. And I thought this was a fitting example of seeing that feisty Aries energy that just knows no bounds. I'm going to go out there and do whatever I want to do. I'm not going to let the gender issues bother me. I'm not going to let anybody tell me there isn't anything I cannot do. And so she's come forth in that way. She's been married several times. This is another thing that you might find. It's not, don't take it absolute here. But that Aries energy that is just initiating all over the place, they can be pretty spirited in initiating relationships. They can be pretty spirited in ending them. So she only had one child, was adopted. She did say one of her regrets was that she didn't have more children, but she was married 4 times. She married one man twice. They married, divorced. See Uranus in Aries in the 7th house as well. The sudden attractions, sudden endings. She also was known to have had several affairs. Some of them with some pretty famous people, of course, because those were the circles that she ran in. Some of them were secrets that she exposed, and some of her lovers have exposed her, and she's denied being lovers with them. And so here's the feisty Aries Libra, 1st, 7th energy coming across, bringing it into the whole world of relationships and putting quite a bit of excitability in that world. So those were my notes for her. And again, I'm trying to go fairly fast with our time delay. Questions from anybody and anything that I've said, anything in the chart you're seeing that I haven't spoken about or looked at yet. Trying to give you an example again. The element of fire and its feistiness and that sense of instinctively becoming, the need to be the pioneer, the one first out of the gate. Checking in for a moment with Leroy here, or giving him a moment to check in with me on anything.
Pretty quiet. So very clear so far. Yeah, hot and dry. That's what I get with the fire signs. It can run real hot and a little on the dry side.
Oh, most definitely the case. We in our household, perhaps some of you know this, we have a young adult in our household, and he is Pluto in the 1st house. And he's the Pluto Scorpio generation, but Pluto in the first house, so an Aries soul. And it's just been so interesting to be able, as all of us, to have those live examples of the archetype running around in the world of our immediate family. And we watch that excitability of Aries just, over the top. And then we watch it, because it's cardinal modality, it loses its instinct. It's hot and heavy, and then